God's gonna lift him again.
To start off, I bet many of you, even the ones from Bakersfield, don't know that Buck Owens' first name was actually Alvis. You can look it up. It was Alvis Edgar Owens Jr. And you probably didn't know there's a famous English car called the Alvis. Here's a picture. Check out that logo, huh? But the best part is what the word Alvis actually means. Turns out it's a Scandinavian word that means all wise. Huh, well how about that? I wonder if Buck knew what his real first name meant. I bet his dad knew the score. So this show isn't about Alvis Buck Owens, no. And it isn't about the Alvis vintage car either, even though we will be talking quite a bit about cars. I guess you could call this an Alvis car because this is my car and my name is Mark Alvis. But that's not the most important thing. My dad was 13 years old in 1941 when Pearl Harbor happened. Before that, most people in the U.S. did not want to join the fight. I asked him once what it was that finally made people change their minds. My dad simply said, fear. It's been a long time coming, but when it comes to climate change, I think we are finally becoming afraid. It might go against what Roosevelt said about it, but the fear of what is happening to the climate is slowly becoming our prime motivator as we move into the future. This should be taken as a dire warning, but I also see it as an incredible opportunity to change things for the better in almost every way. So far, we've approached the issue of climate change as secondary, just another problem on a long list of problems. This is going to have to be replaced immediately with a new sense of urgency. This means adopting all the energy-efficient measures we can and coming up with more. It means changing right now to clean methods of producing electricity, not just when it's convenient and monetarily rewarding. The transition to electric vehicles is already well underway, but we need to shift it into high gear. Simply put, we need to stop putting CO2 into the atmosphere and start taking it out. This means implementing technologies that remove CO2 from the atmosphere. It also means halting deforestation and ramping up reforestation. My first job at Channel 47 in Fresno was as a photog, what TV news calls its field camera people. As a camera guy, I mostly worked alone or with just one reporter. My second job at the CBS affiliate was assignment editor. In that job, I worked with a lot more people, almost everyone in the newsroom, plus the production staff, on-air people, and engineers. It was an interesting job. I learned a lot about the news business and a lot about people in general. I was often amazed at how some of the reporters would goof off in the early part of the day. Yeah, they usually got their stories in by deadline, but they often cut it close. Maybe they didn't realize how much anxiety this completely avoidable behavior caused. I soon realized that this type of behavior is not only found amongst young reporters. Over time, I've seen it in corporations and governments, as well as schools and nonprofit organizations. After a year as assignment editor, I came up with a saying that I've preached ever since, and that's simply that the hour at the beginning of the day is the same length as the one at the end. We may think that when it comes to climate change, we have more time, that we can put off doing the hard work until later, or that somebody else is going to fix it. In truth, when it comes to climate change, we need to act now. We are the ones who need to fix it. Cooper is a bioresource and agricultural engineering major at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and is seeing firsthand just how important education is going to be as we venture into the future.
I always was super into nature, like going to Yosemite with my mom or different national parks or state parks with my mom and my little brother. But it wasn't really until high school when I took AP Environmental Science is when I like super got into it and like really started to appreciate the environment and want to take care of it kind of as a career as well, not only as like just an appreciation for it. So just taking that class was so cool because it was so eye-opening to like so many different things, pollution, the climate change obviously, and different just different controls and stuff that has to do with that. Yeah, I have a younger brother.
What's his name?
His name's Finley. Finley is 15. He's a sophomore at Clovis High right now. Yeah.
So this is the first interview I've done, obviously, since COVID-19 said hello.
Yeah.
Is there any? I don't know. There's no way to prepare for this. And you're going. Where are you going to school?
I go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
So what was it like there over the past month or?
It's been pretty hectic. There are some people taking it super seriously, being locked down in their rooms, and then there's other people still going out and doing stuff. A lot of people were nervous the way that the school handled the situation. I think the situation was very random, and I don't think anyone could prepare for that. But I think towards the end it was fine because everyone's kind of moving out, they're doing their own thing. I've been out with my friends, but it's the same group of friends. It's the 4 or 5 of us just going to our house, going to eat, and then going back to the house. It's not really any big group functions, but with the kids in Florida, even though they're in the water doing all that, I think that's so stupid.
Yeah.
It's so just not intelligent at all. I think what a lot of kids their mindset is, they've seen the research and they think, oh, well, this virus doesn't really affect me in my age range, which is kind of true, but you can still carry it and then give it to someone older who's very susceptible to that, and that's where I see a problem because they're kind of selfish with that. Like, they don't care if they get it, but then if they pass it on to like their grandparents or something like that, that's when it really comes down to trouble. I think a lot more people are quote unquote woke about this pandemic as opposed to climate change because I think people see that it can affect them directly, even though climate change can too, but they're seeing more of the effect like in real time as opposed to climate change. You could kind of see, people don't really notice it as much as the effects of the COVID-19.
People die.
Exactly, yeah. And people are going to die because of climate change too, but it hasn't happened at the rate that the pandemic has, so I think that's why they're more woke for the pandemic as opposed to the climate change.
Yeah.
And that's a great point too, that it's always on TV. It's like, the media is projecting it as an emergency, and then that kind of draws into the drawdown, and because they're the climate mobilization, I mean, that they're advertising this or marketing it as it's a climate emergency, we need to act now. And if every media outlet did that, then I think we would have a similar reaction to it. But right now, the only emergency that's being treated is the COVID-19.
Yeah.
They don't know as much as I do, just because I've taken classes in different stuff and I've been more subjected to it in school. But whenever I tell them different things about it, they're super supportive. They're on our side, I guess you could say, but they're not sure of what exactly causes it, other than carbon dioxide emissions from cars and different things like that. But like they're not aware of like the methane in Siberia that's melting through the permafrost. They're not really sure what that's doing to the atmosphere and stuff like that. But they're definitely supportive, and they're not really sure what to do to change everything or what the solution is, which I don't think a lot of people know what the solution is, but they're definitely on board and supportive of whatever I want and to do with this. I think a lot of people know better at any college. I think just being younger and being more, again, subjected to that during school, like in different classes. No matter what your major is, you've probably learned about it some way or another. I think the thing with rural America or Clovis in general is just they learn about this stuff through the news or whatever research that they do themselves. But with students, they're being subjected to it with their peers and teachers and the media, and so they kind of get to form their own opinions on it, and they could see more different sides of it, I guess you could say. Some people in rural America, they see one news thing, it's not real. Oh, okay, it's not real. And so I think students have a better opportunity to research that and form their own opinions on it based on different media outlets and what their teachers say and what their peers are so passionate about.
Okay. And you said that you've taken classes on climate change issues, or
That mention them, not like climate change 101,
right.
but definitely in AP environmental science, and then even I took an irrigation class, and that just talking about how the temperature's changing, and in the Central Valley, like how the temperature's going to get even hotter and stuff, so you got to adjust your irrigation towards your crops so nothing dies and stuff like that. I definitely am not a pro on it. I just know that I'm very passionate about the subject. From what I've seen, I think that it needs to come from the top down. Actually, no, I'm sorry, from the down up, because obviously government isn't really doing much about it. Industry isn't doing much about it. And, you know, saving the turtles can only do so much at the civilian level, I guess you could say. But I think that it needs to start out with a strong passion from the people that affects the government wanting to take charge and like put regulations towards all these industries that are producing so much carbon dioxide and so much toxins that are going into the atmosphere. And I think from there, that's how we change it all. Because that's the majority of the problem, is all the industries. It's not people, you know, using plastic bottles every day. I mean, even though that's not the best thing, but that's not the main problem. The main problem is with all the industries, and they're just neglecting the climate change in general. I'm not sure why it's taking so long for people to get on board with trying to fight climate change. I mean, you said the same kind of with cigarettes. It took a little while. Like, people knew they were bad in the 50s, but people still did them.
they still do.
They still do, exactly, yeah.
You got any friends that smoke?
I have friends that vape, and that's even worse. That's even worse. But I think the thing with vape too, the thing that I kind of liked is that people started nipping that in the bud almost immediately. They're like, this is so much worse. It's advertised as it's better, but it's so much worse. But I don't understand why that's not happening with climate change. I think I saw a clip of her on Twitter or something like that at some convention. And at first I was kind of confused. I'm like, someone so young could have so much publicity with that. I thought it was really cool. As she aged a little bit and as she started doing more global things and more advertisement, I guess you could say, I started to actually not fully research, but kind of get on board with what she was doing. And I think she's so popular in the global climate change world because she's so passionate about the subject, obviously, but also she's calling people out. And I love that, because no one really does that now. They say, oh, well, we need this change. They're kind of soft about it. We need this change, and this is how we should do it. She's saying, no, this is an emergency. It's your fault. It's your fault. We need to all get together and solve this problem. And I think just that passion is what's speaking to people, and that's what kind of is waking people up about this. The people are trying to do things, but the people don't have the control that the government does, obviously. And the government has the capability to put forth regulations and laws that can limit different emissions from different industries and different companies, but that's just not happening right now. I think, back to the climate mobilization, it would really take a World War II type mobilization, because as it is right now, nothing's happening. Even though so many people, Greta and different other media outlets are saying, we need change, we need this to happen, government's just not listening. So I think we really need like a World War II type mobilization, something that's just such a global, massive effect, and then there could be change. I've seen a stat, and I know it's not, I'm going to estimate because I don't know the exact numbers, but it was something along the lines of a few companies are responsible for around 75% of the U.S.'s carbon dioxide emissions.
Wow.
So, first thing, cut that.
And then do you know what they are?
I don't know. And I think another thing that I'm not sure if it's already in action in California or U.S. In general, but having at least a goal of having all cars on the road by 2050 or some other year to be all electric vehicles. I'm not sure if that's possible, but...
Oh, it's very possible.
Okay. Is Atlas American made?
Yeah.
I think that's going to be even better, because that's another thing people are talking about. Ford or Ram and Dodge and all that. Like, oh, it's American made, I gotta buy it. Yeah, but that's like one of the main advertisements that they put forth, and people are like, oh, it's American made, I'll buy it. And I think that'll help if, since Atlas is American made, people are gonna say, ooh, it's American made, and even if they don't care about climate change, just the American made part is gonna be, oh, okay, looks cool, it's American made, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
I did a project at the beginning of my winter quarter in my technical writing class where we had to make a podcast, and I made the podcast about, it's called Carb Fix. I mentioned it last time. It's a project going on in Iceland where they're taking the carbon dioxide emissions from a power plant and they're injecting it with water into the ground, into the rock formations, into the ground, where it crystallizes into rock, so that way it doesn't go up into the atmosphere. And I mentioned that because they're asking for different climate change, not businesses, but different climate change groups that are passionate about that. And so I researched it a little bit. I mainly used it just for that emotional punch of it, like this needs to happen. They're calling people out. They're calling it an emergency. And I think that's the most important thing that they're doing, is calling it an emergency, because that's what it is. Do people treat it as such? Not as many people as there should be, but I think that's just the best thing that they're doing, is calling it an emergency, and people need to act now. I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. It's going to be an ongoing thing until the majority is on board. I feel like right now the majority is not on board with solving climate change, and I think that's one of the main problems that not only the U.S. but the world has in general. Yeah, I definitely don't think it's just a flu season. I think this has been an ongoing thing, that people are neglecting the facts that there is a problem and that we need to all act together to create a solution. What was the other part of that question?
Well, that was where I was headed. Is in answering it that way, you also say that it is fixable, whereas some people would say we're screwed already.
I think it is fixable. It's possible, but it's going to take a large change to make everybody on board, even the government, and just the general public, to be not only on board but passionate about it and want to fix it. I don't know if that's going to take incentives for different businesses or just a passion. I'm not really sure where that's going to take us. If the market can produce such things that people are going to want and that's going to save people money, because at the end of the day, even if you're not passionate about climate change, people want to save money. And it does come down to sort of a capitalistic thing that we were talking about earlier. If it could save people money and it works, people are going to buy it. So I think it just takes some innovation from some person out there is going to be making something that's going to make them a lot of money and that's going to solve a lot of the world's problems in terms of climate change, of course. And I'm not sure why people are neglecting it so much. I mean, it's in human nature to, if there's a problem, let's solve it.
You as a human may have that.
Yeah.
I know that that's true of me too, but
Yeah, no, if we see a problem, we want to solve it. With the microphone stuff, we want to solve it, obviously. But no, with other things, with the tobacco industry, people found out that it's bad. It took a little while, but they wanted to solve it. And I think possibly one of the things with climate change that's taking so long is people see that it's going to be hard. And people are thinking in their head, this is going to be really hard to solve. Let's just put it in the back of the brain. Let's not think about it at all. Maybe it'll be solved by someone else, but I don't want to think about it, so it must not exist also. So I think that might be the mindset of a lot of disbelievers as well. I think the kids are going to be most affected by it. I think if we wait that long for the kids to become the adults, I think that might be a little too late. Hopefully I think it's up to the kids, right? But if we could wait that long, I don't think that's going to be the best option, because change needs to happen immediately, because things are going to get multiple times worse. It's just going to be at a rate that we can't even think of right now. The kids, I think, have the most passion about it, and we have the most opportunity to want to solve it, but hopefully people that are in industry and in different markets right now, hopefully they kind of get their butts kicked by something and get a wake-up call and, okay, we put ourselves in this position, like these are our kids, Like, I don't know how they're not feeling guilty that there's a problem and their kids are going to grow up, temperatures rising, water's coming in, you're not going to be able to go to the beach anymore, and the sky's going to look all foggy, but it's all smog, and I'm not really sure why people aren't really feeling guilty enough to want to solve something before it's the kids' jobs to do so. It was a society grows great when people plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit in. And I think that's just the best way to go about this climate change is, I want to solve this problem. It won't benefit me, but it's going to benefit generations to come that pass me. And I think that's the perfect way to go about this. Will it happen? I'm not sure. But I honestly believe if that quote is lived by, I think it'll be great. A society grows great when people plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit in.
Our first 9 segments of Saving the Planet DIY featured more efficient products and machines. Our last segment is about more efficient brains. It may sound obvious, but the easiest way to save energy is simply not use it. Unfortunately, this can be harder than it seems because a lot of our energy use is built into the machines and systems we currently have and shows up as waste heat or line loss. It's known as acceptable waste, and getting rid of it will require more than frugality. To reduce this type of energy waste, we have to start with a whole new set of parameters. Not just get her done, but do so in the most efficient way possible. We can do it, but it will require time and some very big commitments. In the meantime, we can drastically reduce the amount of energy we use by simply paying attention. Turn things off. And switch from the mindset of, it really won't matter, to everything matters. It took me quite a while to really understand what climate change is. Years, in fact. It was probably a decade after I first heard the term global warming that I finally asked my friend Phil Martine to explain it to me, which he did back in 2004. My initial reaction was just like Greta. If we know this is happening, why are we talking about anything else? At that time, climate change seemed so huge and so terrifying that I knew I had to do something about it right away. So I did what most people do. Nothing. This strategy didn't work. I just got more anxious and more depressed. The psychology of climate change is complicated, as it forces us to question the very core of our way of life. Confusing, to say the least. Working on this show has given me insight into what people think about where we now stand. What is really important in our lives? I ask this because I think it's changing. In fact, I think it has already changed. 2 of the things that really impressed me about the people I interviewed was their depth of knowledge and their genuine caring. There weren't a lot of tears or anything, but there was always a sense of seriousness. I think people are really ready and need to talk about what's going on with the climate. Each person brought their own vision of the most important thing, and along with it, a sense of hope, from Heather and her elephants to Vernice and her solar hats. I used to think that people had sort of given up, that we were just going to ride this train right on over the cliff. Yes, climate change is the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced, and things look pretty bleak right now. But while there are plenty of doomsayers, there are also those who see it as potentially our finest hour. They see climate change as an opportunity to reset the way we live. David Suzuki is one of my favorite sources of inspiration. He admits things are desperate and we're running out of time, but even so, he says, we can't just say it's too late. What would be the point of that? In the part of our show called Saving the Planet DIY, we have shown a lot of ways you can save energy, pollute less, and save money. But the main goal of the segment is to prove things can be different and to empower you to take action. Movies inspire me sometimes. There's a scene in Interstellar where the pilot Cooper is trying to dock his spacecraft with a severely damaged space station, which he knows he must do to survive. Still, he hesitates. Oddly, it's a robot that helps him. Cooper, the robot, says, "This is no time for caution." Which is what I said to young Cooper Pendergast when he asked me what we need to do about climate change. "Cooper," I said, "we've run out of time. We need to do everything we can right now. There is no time for caution."